Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and this is the TRU Community Gathering. This is Theater Resources Unlimited. Those of you who are new to us out there, we're an arts service organization based in New York, and we've for 32 years we've been helping people understand the business and navigate the business of theater, and we've had a particular interest in developing and nurturing producers. But we now have producers and writers and directors and actors, all members of the theater profession that come through our different programs. Thank you for discovering us. Thank you for finding us on YouTube and our podcast, wherever you are out there. And this is this is our 202nd consecutive week of doing this. I started doing this April 17th, 2020 because of COVID. It was a response to being isolated. Basically, I was trying to find ways of bringing people together and creating a sense of community while we were all isolated. And so the early meetings really had to deal with topics about creating in isolation, and what are we going to do since we can't have live performance. But now that we're back to something that resembles the theater that we used to know pre-COVID, now that we're back to live performance, our topics have opened up to much more usual topics, much more general things about theater and the arts. I think we basically have come to a place where we all feel not as threatened by COVID, and we not all of us are masking, although I still mask on the subway. Most of us are vaccinated, and most of us feel relatively safe about our health and our immune systems and all that. But there are still people around us who might be more sensitive and more open to getting illnesses. So please be conscious and please be courteous of the people around you, everybody. So I'm not sure. I was going to bring in my speaker, but my speaker turned off his camera. So today we're going to talk to somebody I've known him for many, many years, Jay Michaels. Jay Michaels has an interesting history. He goes back to like the beginnings of off-off-Broadway, which is one of the things that I'm really interested in talking to him about. Yes, he's a marketer, and yes, everybody in this room has used him to do promotions for them, and everybody in this room is singing his praises, and so happy with the work that he's done and the marketing he's done for them. But so we're actually going to talk about marketing, but we're going to save that for a little later. Right now, I want to bring him into the room. And by the way, if you ever want to be part of this and come here and actually be part of the conversation, part of the community, you can email me at trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com, and I will invite you every week. So Jay Michaels, welcome to the TRU Community Gathering.
I am honored to be here, Bob. It is wonderful to see you again. I remember you from way back. This is a treat. This is an honor. I'm looking forward to it.
So I think we were both around the fringes of what was going on. And I guess it was in the the 80s, the early 80s, when we were starting to try to rebrand off-off-Broadway as indie theater.
Yep. Yeah. At that point, people didn't even want to say off-off-Broadway. It didn't exist. I had so many shows that by today's standards are off-off-Broadway, but New York Magazine and New York Times and whatever it called them, off-Broadway, because there was no off-off-Broadway to speak of.
And the reason why we decided that we wanted to try to train people to think of it as indie theater was because I think Martin Denton and other people that were involved with this back then, they felt that off-Broadway just was comparing yourself to something that made you look smaller.
Completely.
So we've been here we are like 30 or 40 years later. I don't know how many years later this is, and people are still saying off-off-Broadway, and it's the terminology that we use. But let's go back to your roots. You were originally an actor, weren't you?
Yes, yes. Broadway, by the way, is a contract term. When you're dealing with Actors Equity, a showcase code and things like that is called an off-off-Broadway contract. So that's why the name still breathes, even though people prefer to say independent theater. But yeah, I began on the other side of the table. I began as an actor. I left school and decided to make my fortune as an actor, thinking nobody looked like me, nobody sounded like me. I'm going to be on Broadway. Well, the first audition I ever went to was the national tour of Oliver. And I thought, okay, I could be Mr. Bumble, I could be Fagin, I could be so many. And then I walked into a room of 75 Mr. Bumbles, 150 Fagins. And I realized, okay, this is gonna take an effort. I remained an actor for many years, but out of frustration, I ended up starting to direct. And then out of more frustration, I produced. And then out of further frustration, I became an artistic director of my own company. And slowly but surely, now here I am years later. And I'm basically marketing all of those the next generation, if you will. Maybe about 20 years ago, I got tired of climbing ladders and asking for money. And I looked at my day job, which at that point was marketing and promotion for Broadway shows, for international events, for fundraisers and whatever. And I said, well, why don't I offer these services to those who really need it? If you have a Broadway budget, you don't need me. But if you have that special, what can I steal from my day job budget to get your dream project up? I'm going to give you those tricks of the trade that I've learned producing Guys and Dolls and Damn Yankees on Broadway.
So you you were one of the early people who realized that there was a need for marketing. It's small shows that didn't have budgets. So you were there pretty early on. What was the first show that you actually helped market? Do you remember?
Yes, the first show was actually a cabaret performer. The very first show I ever marketed was a, 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 a drag queen named William Love. He contacted me. I think I put an ad in Backstage or something like that, and said I'm here to offer promotion. At that point, I was working at the Daily News, so I had like the inside track for a lot of things. And so I made that offer to the independent theater community, and he was the first one. And I got him into a club in the East Village. I got Michael Musto to actually come down and see him. It was quite an experience. And it's when people talk about hands-on, that's the days of hands-on. We're so used to, okay, let me send a press release. There's my mailing list. There's the button, send. But back then it was putting things in envelopes. Back then it was sitting on the phone as long as you possibly can, sitting on the landline as long as you possibly can to get some sort of confirmation. And even then, now you sit on the phone again to confirm it the day of the show. Now you sit on the phone when they don't show up. And you just keep mailing and mailing. The post office, I think, once the post office once the internet started, I think the post office lost money because not everybody was buying stamps or sending their pictures through the mail.
And God bless the not-for-profit rates. I remember when we used to do mailings all the time, and
oh yeah,
and because we had to. I remember Shakespeare mailing. Remember Hal at Shakespeare mailing. He would provide his own not-for-profit. I don't know what umbrella so that you could actually do your postage for a lot less money. A lot of things have changed. I mean, obviously we no longer. Well, there are still people who send out postcards. And to be honest with you, Jay, these days, to get a postcard in the mail, you actually notice it more. You do notice it. So I'm not sure whether it's such a bad idea.
You notice it, but do you keep it? What I always advise my clients, postcards are very cool, but you don't want someone saying, oh, that's nice, putting it on their refrigerator and not taking it off until, 6 months after your show. The trick is to make it a coupon or something like that. Oh, I got a postcard. And if I bring it to the theater, I get $10 off. Okay, now I'll hold on to this, and now maybe I'll go to that show. So I think postcards need to be interactive, just like anything else in this world. But I do like postcards a lot, but they gotta have a purpose. If it's just here, see my show. If it's here, see my show, get $1 off. Now you're talking.
So basically, one of the things I want to talk with you about, because it's something I can't talk with everybody about, are the differences between then and now. what do you miss? What do you miss from the old days? And let's talk about what do you consider the start of off-off-Broadway? I'm thinking it's probably the 70s, but I think we were aware of it in the 80s, or no. Trying to think when I was.
There's two openings. There's two starts, if you will, to off-off-Broadway. There was the late 50s into the 60s, where you have places like Theater Genesis, which is ironic. That's I named my theater company Genesis Rep because of Theater Genesis, which was one of the starts, and Cafe Chino. That's where it was
But
still
that's off-Broadway. That's downtown off-Broadway, and that was a scene that was very important.
Oh, but that was considered the off-off-Broadway movement. That's where it began.
Okay.
That's where it started. That's like the gestation, but what we call off-off-Broadway, late 70s, early 80s. That's when you get your independent artists. That's when the showcase code blew up. That's when a lot of people said, I'm tired of waiting for Hal Prince to notice me. Let's do our show. That's when it really got big. The 80s, yes, the very early 80s, huge at that point. Huge.
So Jay, we hear a lot. We hear a lot from young people. I mean, I'm at the age where I feel weird saying young people because it makes me feel so old. But we hear from young people how difficult things are today. Are they any more difficult today than they were back in the 70s and 80s when our friends were all starting out?
It's a double-edged sword. It is so less difficult now. In the time that I'm speaking to you all, I could probably promote everyone's show without missing a beat, just using my phone, just using my other computer screen. It is that easy these days. If you have the mailing list, the resources, the time, and happily I now have the staff, you can promote very quickly. It's do it yourself thanks to the internet. What's different is the two things that I miss. Well, I miss one and the other one's very different, is the fact that there's so much now. There's so much sensory overload. If you look at television now, which is really just off-off-Broadway on screen, there are so many channels, there are so many shows, there is so many everything. In the good old days, to put up a show was a Herculean task. Like I said, you needed mailings, you needed certain things. Everything was hands-on, everything was running to some place. So we don't have that anymore. You can do that from your desk very easily. And thank you, pandemic. It's made it even easier to just do it from your desk. But there's so much more. Back then, it was difficult. So those really with the fortitude produced their shows. Nowadays, it's so much easier. You can do it very quickly. You could do a Zoom reading, etc. So now you got to break through the competition. Back then, to do it yourself was great. Nowadays, you got to have the managers, the reps. You got to have a press rep. I'm not saying it to promote business, though I'm brilliant and cheap. But the real thing now, you must have people that cut through the clutter. Look at this room. Look at this one room here and how many shows are being done. Now multiply this by thousands. And so you really need people to help you cut through the clutter. That's the big difference. Back then, it was a lot harder, so you needed more fortitude and there were less shows. Nowadays, it's much easier, so everybody's producing.
So I want to actually talk to you about producing, because you said that one of your transitions into what you do now was as a producer. Take off the marketing hat for a second and just talk to me about what it was like producing. Tell us a little bit about what you produced before you decided to stop doing that and get into marketing.
A lot of things I did. In one case, I was going to do the revival of Vanities. At that point, Vanities was, I think, 10 years old, and I was going to do a revival. Ironically, they prohibited me from getting the rights, and so out of nowhere, I had to find original material. The first show I really produced was called The Bard Off-Broadway, and it came about, excuse me, it came about because I couldn't get the rights to Vanities. And so we ended up doing, and Joseph Papp did this same thing, so at least I was in good company. We did Shakespeare scenes with original music. And it became quite the thing because we had to go hunt down a theater that we could afford. Then we had to do all the rentals for it. We were non-union at that point. Eventually, about a year later, I started working with unions, so I can share on that. But it It wasn't as difficult as one can imagine because you've got to have the fortitude. If you have the fortitude to do it, it's not bad, but you must call up the theater. You have to be ready to negotiate your contract. You have to be organized because your actors, they can only be there a certain time. So you have to make sure your schedules are right. Thus, you need a stage manager or an assistant director or something. And you got to have money. We all sit there and say, okay, I need $5,000 to do the show, but I only have 2,000. I'll do it and I'll raise the money. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you need $5,000 to do a show, get $6,000 and then do the show. There are hidden costs. There are sudden things that happen. There are things that you want to add. There is differences in prices. You think something is valued at this, it's more. You may have to spend more for your actors. You may have to spend more for your director, etc. It's about raising money. That was my hell. Everything else was really good. I really enjoy negotiating contracts to this day, and I do it quite often. I really enjoy pitch decks and press kits and all of that. But you must have the fortitude to raise the money. Start with your fundraising pitch. And that's the other thing. If you're going to do fundraising of any kind, don't wait till your show is ready. If you have page 1 of your show, start fundraising. That takes the longest amount of time. So if you plan to produce in this lifetime, start raising the money. Everything else, have the fortitude, and it can be done. It just means getting on the phone, even to this day, getting on the phone, making sure you understand contracts. And that's the other thing. Make sure you understand contracts. We all look at contracts and we look at it with the brain of someone in a hurry. Oh, it says, okay, 6 days a week. I can do, yeah, that's fine. Oh, $200 each, whatever that is, that's great. No, really read your contracts, really go over it. I did my first off-Broadway show that I ever produced was in 1998. And it was a musical based on a gay comic strip. And we did everything right, but we didn't look at our contracts as close as we should have. And there were so many moments where equity came down on us. There were so many moments where there were issues with the actors, issues with the theater, because we just looked and said, oh, wait a minute. Oh, we have to be out by that point, not done with the show. Oh, no. Be stupid. Be stupid when you look at your contracts. If you think you understand it, don't. Look at it 2, 3, 4 times. If you're not sure, check with someone qualified. That's your big thing. Raise the money and know the lingo of your agreements, any kind of agreements. I just had something today. Today was devoted to damage control because of a misread contract for a 29-hour reading. So look and make sure you know what you're talking about. Be a lawyer and be a banker before you be a producer.
Okay, well, and thank you for a lot of what you've said, because you know that's one of the things that we push here as well. There aren't people. There may be dishonest people in any business, and there may be some in theater, but the truth of the matter is you're not likely to have had an experience with a producer who was intentionally trying to screw you. No. It's generally a question of you didn't negotiate the terms that you wanted. And you know, it's exactly what Jay said. Make sure you understand your contract. Don't pretend to understand it. Actually ask for somebody to talk to you. That's why God, if he did at all, I think it was God who made lawyers. I know there's some question about that, but that's why God made lawyers, so that we can come to them and say, look at this, should I sign this? And your lawyer really has to also explain it to you. The answer to that question is never yes or no. The answer to that question is, well, what is it you want to get out of this? Why are you doing this? And then you and your lawyer talk, and then you find out what terms are compatible with your goals and what terms aren't. So
I wasn't kidding when I said be stupid. I'm being off the cuff, yeah. But don't be embarrassed to ask for help, because it could save you thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah. So I want to go back to the comparison of then and now. I think one of the obvious things that we both can identify was the fact that there were a lot more venues. We've lost a lot of the indie and off-Broadway venues over the years. Yep. Do you have a realistic sense of how many we've lost over the years, or would it just be a guess? I mean, I could guess, I guess. I could guess, I guess.
I almost look at it like casualties of war. I don't know how many theaters are gone, but every day I'll make a mention to somebody and they'll say, "Oh no, that's closed." The other day I heard about the duplex not opening itself up to events anymore, and I found out this is like 2 or 3 years old, and I didn't even know that. There are so many venues that disappear. Mine was one of the last shows in the 13th Street Rep before it closed. I was working on Line there. I was working on the original Line.
Yeah, let's talk about
And
that. That's kind of a landmark in theater history.
oh
So
yeah,
you were the original director of Line
I was
with
not the original director. Ironically, one of my professors at Queens College was. Carol Ilson was the original director. I directed the closing cast, the final cast. We were in the middle of a run, and it was an anniversary. It was like the 50th anniversary of it, and we set the show back in 1966 when it first started, and we were in 1960s clothing and everything like that, and it was really doing well, but the theater was suffering badly.
Just to fill
And
people in
finally,
on, because there's a couple things that people may not know it. A Line is played by Israel Horovitz, and it could make the claim to be the longest running off-Broadway show in New York at one
off
time. Off-Broadway show in New York. Well, actually, it was running longer than most things ran off-Broadway.
that is true.
So I mean, it goes way back, and it was the heart of, well, I don't know if it was the heart, but it was the centerpiece of the 13th Street Repertory Company, which was run by a lovely lady named Edith O'Hara, who we honored at a benefit many years ago. And I can also tell you that when I first moved to New York, I was one of the people in Mama Hare's tree. I was part of that whole group.
That's
I'm
great.
surprised we didn't know each other then.
I came into the 13th Street Rep somewhat late. I was there as a press rep for a number of years, and then I ended up assuming artistic roles there. So we were probably two ships that passed in the night.
I just hung around. I didn't do anything there but hang out.
Well, there you go.
They never found anything for me to do. I think I may have cleaned up one day. So yeah, so 13th Street Rep for one thing. That's one of the major casualties of the theater, the venue wars.
In the middle of our run for Line, I was directing the closing company, and I get a call from the producer at that point, and he said, "Okay, you're going to go on hiatus now." And I said, "Okay, so when are we returning?" And he said, "I'll let you know. I'm still waiting for the call." So yeah,
well, they finally lost the battle. They were trying to landmark the building. I think it's gone. I think the building's going to be gone soon.
There was so much battle for that building. It's prime real estate, and there were too many people looking to do other things with it. So yes, it lost its battle.
Susan Crawford says her memory of the number of off-Broadway theaters in the 1970s is 200. I mean, if that's true, Susan, I think we got like 30 now.
There was much more. There was much more.
I mean, can anybody? Does anybody have an idea of how? I know RK Green's in the room, so he's going to Google it, and I think something's going to come up in the chat in a second. It's going to tell me how many off-Broadway theaters there are right now. But I'm not aware of that many of them. I think that everybody's fighting for real estate right now. Everybody is fighting to get. It used to be Broadway commercial shows were fighting to get a Broadway theater, and we never actually were looking at how much fighting was going on to find available theater space for doing small shows and doing off-Broadway stuff. And that's another thing I want to bring up. What are we going to do about off-Broadway, Jay Michaels? What do you think has happened to off-Broadway? And is there a way of making it more vital than it is now? Because
it's starting to. Off-Broadway is doing this little split. You have one side of off-Broadway. These are the six-figured budgeted shows at larger nonprofits or independent producers who can raise the money. I have one actually opening this summer, a legit off-Broadway, and their budget is high six-figure. And I have two others actually that are around those same budgets that are happening this summer. So there's one level of off-Broadway that's becoming this powerful Broadway Junior. It's becoming the Broadway Junior in the sense of budgets, in the sense of actors, because there are actors that will do off Broadway. The salary they ask for is met, and it has enough cachet that they would do it. Then there's the other off Broadway. These are companies that have enough money to just eke into that range. My hope is both keep going, because as this goes, that's going to be a much larger commercial venue for everyone. Off-Broadway is easier to get into, so it's going to be a larger commercial venue. And as this grows, this is almost what we thought of as off-Broadway way back when. This is the valiant few who've raised enough and are doing their work, their powerful work. And I'm listening to some of you talk about your shows, and it sounds the same way there, that they're bringing them to the forefront. So off-Broadway is doing that. They're just doing it in two lanes right now, which is pretty interesting.
Well, there are a lot of things to talk about here. First of all, we're pretending that we're back to pre-COVID levels, and we're not in theater in general. So we know that regional theaters are really hard hit. We know that Broadway has been having trouble getting the audiences back to the levels they were at pre-COVID. In your awareness, are the off-Broadway off-Broadway? Well, see, I don't think of showcases as being off-Broadway. Those are off-Broadway. So
yeah. Sometimes their budget raises them into off-Broadway, or their contract does. I did one. It was a showcase, and then it went to an off-Broadway A. That's when it went from off to off. But yeah, most of them you would consider off.
So, do you think that audiences are back for small theater shows, small shows? I mean, they were having enough of trouble finding support and finding audiences pre-COVID. Now that we're in shutdown, are people supporting off-Broadway?
Dubiously, yes. Audiences want to come back. Audiences want to come back desperately. This is really the first year. And I was talking to someone at Playbill, actually, and they were saying this to me. This is the first year that things are really on a steady rise in terms of audiences, in terms of shows, where people are finally starting to say, okay, I'm not going to die if I go outside. So this is really the first year we're seeing that. So yes, audiences are coming back, but they don't got the money. They don't have the Hamilton money. They don't have the Broadway money yet. So they want to come back and they don't know where to go. That's why our two off-Broadways are doing really great, because people are saying, okay, I want to see something. Let me go to this. I can't afford this. Let me go to this. So we're starting to see an uptick in off-Broadway and off-Broadway audiences. It's a matter of making sure they know we're out there. Once again, it comes down to standing on the soapbox and screaming your show to get people to know it's there. They'll go if they know it's there.
So let's talk about pre and post shutdown, and in terms of how has shutdown affected your business, and how has shutdown affected how you are now helping others to get the word out about their shows? Has much changed or no?
A hell of a lot has changed. When my business all but closed for about 2 weeks, I only had theater projects. So when we went into shutdown, there were no theater projects, period. So that became a quite a stressful thing for a little bit. I was watching the Actors Fund telethon with Rosie O'Donnell when we first had the shutdown, and an epiphany hit me that the playing field now has leveled. You know, there were these Broadway actors in their basement playing guitar out of makeup. They were these unshaven and uncombed, Broadway stars singing for their supper. And suddenly I realized, well, the playing field now is leveled. We're all hoping the audience pays attention, and we all hope the audience is going to pay attention to that little box now that we're all looking at. I contacted a lot of clients and said, how about doing Zoom readings? How about finding videotapes of your non-union productions that you did 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, and let's put them on YouTube or something like that. And out of nowhere, a lot of my clients zapped back by doing video work. I worked with the Queensboro Performing Arts Center, and we did 2 amazing shows that got awards and everything like that on Zoom. So as much as now we look at Zoom and we say, oh, not again, back then it was an absolute goldmine. What it also did, and it gave me a really interesting learning lesson. That's why I went into film. That's where I called up all of my independent film people, filmmakers, and said, okay, I got plenty of time. You need anything? And I started promoting and even producing film work. And I learned that independent film and independent theater, very, very similar. The final product's different, but the raising of the money, the getting the team, the hands-on, the constant work, it's the same. And when you really look at the channels that we have now, when you really skim through all of these channels, you're really looking at just televised off-off-Broadway. Eventually, my business absolutely boomed. And when we started to come out of pandemic, okay, I got the live shows. Now I got all the video shows. Now I got television. Now I got film. And ironically, because the world now was much closer, thanks to the fact that we only had video, we only had our Zooms and our StreamYards. I had shows around the world. I have a client in Italy. I have 2 clients in England. I just did the Adelaide Fringe for the 2nd year in a row in Australia. So it's if you capitalize on, and I hate to put it this way, if so many people looked at the pandemic and said, oh, okay, I'll wait. And that's all they did. A lot of others said, okay, what can I do instead? And that's where you really succeed. If you capitalize on the stopgaps and you make them your own, you will profit immeasurably from it. So the pandemic was a horror at first, but then if you look at it, the boulder landed in the middle of the road. A lot of people stopped because they couldn't go anywhere. The smart ones went around the boulder.
Well, I have to say that my first instinct when shutdown first hit, and everybody who knows me knows this. I just thought I was going to have to close my company. So I was one of those. My first impulse was, okay, let's sit back and wait until things get back to normal. But it only took me a month to turn my thinking around and to say, okay, I will open up a Zoom account. I will open up a Zoom room. I will start doing things virtually. And now I'm hooked on virtual. I think that virtual is a great part of the toolbox. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody who doesn't want to do anything virtual and they want to do everything live. That's fine. I also think that there may be times where you may want to look at virtual as being, again, part of the toolbox, another option that you can use in your road to development.
I will highly agree, and I'll go one step further and say, if you don't use virtual somewhere within your production, you're a fool. Because in terms of promotion, virtual is a goldmine. In terms of enticing people with small video clips of your show, of monologues on TikTok, etc., is a goldmine. If you're thinking everyone's just going to wait for the ABCs in Playbill or New York Times, good luck to you.
The New York Times, the ABCs are not quite bad. They're like the ABs.
Yeah, thank you.
There's like 3 shows.
I
don't think they're ever coming back, by the way.
No, they're not. They're definitely not. They don't need to. They don't need to. Even the New York Times is online. But if you create little video clips, if you create these moving pieces, you're going to get interest because, again, no one's waiting till Wednesday to pick out the new Backstage or Time Out New York. Everybody's clicking onto their phone. So if you have a little video that someone can look at while they're waiting for the train or the bus, you're ahead of the game.
I'm looking for somebody who can do TikTok for us because I don't know how to do it.
TikTok's easy. TikTok's easy. It's surreal. And yes, we're all afraid that TikTok's eventually going to steal our voice prints and take over the world. Okay, fine. You could do that. Just give me residuals. But TikTok's really easy. But again, it takes work. There's formatting with it. You have to become a film editor to promote your show these days.
I'm going to suggest to the room that you first of all, Jay, have there been any questions that I've missed or comments? And I'm going to suggest to the room that you feel free to start asking questions and putting things in the chat.
Please, please, please. I'm looking at my chat now. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah, sorry. I got bumped out, so I'm trying to catch up here.
Oh, if you got bumped out, then you lost the chat.
No, it's all still here.
Oh, okay.
Weird thing, but let's see.
Oh, and just for YouTube and podcast viewers, just for historical relevance, today is the day of the East Coast earthquake, and we actually, while we were talking, we had another tremor.
Yes,
So,
we did. Yes, we did. I didn't want to say anything, but my computer shook again.
So
we have a great question from RK Green. Mr. Green, it is a pleasure to connect with you. I know Dan and Susan speak immensely highly of you. Do you recommend stunts as a way to attract publicity? Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Doug DeVita actually was looking at one for his show that he's doing now at the Fresh Fruit Festival. There's several scenes that take place in Joe Allen's, and he wanted to have a photo shoot in Joe Allen's. It will happen once we do that. But yes, for sure, any stunt that you could do that can be interactive, that the audience can not only watch, but to be involved in some way, even online, something where the audience answers questions, a contest or anything like that, and an event that happens somewhere. Also, intellectual events, I think, are absolutely marvelous. We're all, it's millennials and Gen Z are not looking for stuff. That's for my generation. They're looking for experiences. So to host panels at schools, at theaters, at workshops, at studios, at classes, talking about the message within a particular show, or getting, if you're part of a festival, getting a few groups together to talk about their show and their messages in there is really excellent. We're all interested in learning these days. Even a great way to network is to take a class. A brilliant way of networking is to be with organizations like TRU. So to do events, it's really marvelous. It's really marvelous. And events are one of those things. Events are like dressing up. People look at events and they say, oh, they have money. There's something because they did a panel. So it also hypnotizes an audience into thinking you got much more money and time than you actually have.
okay.
Q&As following a show. Yes. Talkbacks after a show. Really excellent. And there's another hypnosis, because even if your actors are somewhat unknown, the audience is sitting there and the actor comes out and talks to them. There's some sort of a starstruck thing about speaking to the actor. So you're promoting your show well, you're giving it a stronger cachet, and you're doing a good deed by everyone by doing it. Are there any platforms you recommend for fundraising upcoming projects such as Fractured Atlas? Yes. In terms of fundraising, look at unique ways of fundraising. If you're going to use a fundraising source, as much as some are tried and true, the problem is if you get an email from Kickstarter or Indiegogo, you know what it is. So you may look at it. If someone doesn't want to donate immediately, they may not look at it or something like that. I would suggest things like Patreon. If you're going to do fundraising, let it be something where you can have videos where they could get a monthly something, where they can be connected somewhere. Get something that has a different name to it. Or if you're going to use Indiegogo or Fractured Atlas or Kickstarter or whatever, do something unique with it. Watch this video. We interviewed the playwright on the show. We spoke to him in California, etc. Something interesting, so people will latch on. If they see certain names, they say, I don't want to give right now, and they won't pay any attention.
That's something we should also be very specific about. We're very limited in what we can show of our actors in a show that they're doing on those clips, but content does not have to be specifically from the show. It can be people talking about the show. It's the actors talking about the show, or the actors engaged in something else, because equity doesn't necessarily let us show clips from the show.
If you could show, I think you can show up to like 3 minutes or something. I'm not sure. It's worth looking into a contract. If you show up to a certain amount of time of a show, it's considered advertising, and it's fine. Anything further infringes on the actor's rights. So that's something to think about. But there's no harm in interviewing the actor. And
Right.
so your actor is sitting and chatting about the show, and you put up that video. There's no harm in having them at a bar saying, hey, we love to do the show. anything that makes the audience say, I want to talk to them, I want to be involved, is really excellent.
Well, that's the key. It's social media is about engagement. So it's not about selling tickets, and it's really not necessarily about showing them a scene from your show, which is nice if you can do it. It's really about getting them intrigued and wanting to post something, and hearing something interesting, and they want to post their response to that.
The trick, what do they say when you go to an audition? Your goal is to get a callback, not to get cast. It's the same thing. When you're raising money, you're also raising awareness. Even if no one gives you a penny, but they know when your show is, now you've done a good deed. Now you've done something good for your show. Here is a really excellent question. Oh my gosh, John Ewing III, from your perspective, how would you determine if your ad rep is not doing a good job? Okay, absolutely brilliant. Press reps, we cannot promise you things. What we can promise you is deliverables. We can promise you press releases. We can promise you listing notices. We can promise you anything that comes out of our hands. The best way to know how good or not good your press rep is the materials you get. If it's seen, if it's part of things, if you get listed, well, that's a fait accompli. But if not, how many press releases are you getting? How many changes can you make? Will they help you with designing your imagery? And here's the big thing, do they have in-house connections? The big thing that I always look at when someone, and ironically, I got into this because the first few press reps I've worked with, whenever I said something to them, they said, well, I sent it out. I said, well, did they get it? I don't know. If your press rep could tell you, I sent it out, I got a receipt that says they saw it, I called them and they said they'll look at it, that's a good press rep. If you get someone who says, I sent it out, you can too. The real thing is when you interview your press rep, find out what their internal connections are. Do they know someone at Time Out New York enough that they can respond to them by name? Do they have connections to arts sites, arts blogs, podcasts, rehearsal studios? Are there places where if you say, can I mention your name, I'll get a discount, and they say yes, that's a good press rep. The ones that say, I'm doing my best, they may not be bad, but if you really want to look at your ROI, see what they have already in their arsenal that can get you some guarantee. I have writers, I have freelance writers connected to art sites who, when I call them, they'll say, yes, I'll come down and I'll review a show. So right there, when someone says, can you get me reviewed? Yes. Can I get you the New York Times? We're working on it. Can I get you a review? Yes. So if you get enough yeses, your press rep's doing a good job.
And that really, I want to stress, requires having conversations. I mean, everything in this business is about negotiation. You have to know what the expectations are. You can't bring a press rep on and then be mad at them for not doing something that you didn't say you wanted them to do. So you have to have the conversation and say, can you do this? Can you do this? Will you do this for me? Will you do that for me? Completely. And I think to add to the repertory is specifically what Jay said. It's like, okay, I understand that you're going to send out press releases for me. Will you follow up as well? Just having the conversation is going to make a difference.
Yep, for sure.
Everything in this business, people just forget to talk about what they want.
Are there many reviewing organizations as in the past? It feels like no one reviews anymore. Guess what? There are more than you know. This is the big point I'm bringing up. There are thousands of everything. There are thousands of art sites out there that will review your show. The problem is we have this antiquated philosophy that, okay, I'm calling the Times, the News, the Post, Time Out New York, the Washington Post. I'm calling these guys. Yes, call them. But how about the millions of arts blogs and sites that will gladly come down and see your show? And these are run by people like artists, like all of us. So they'll understand what your work is. And Thornton Wilder said, in 100 years, it'll all be the same. Don't sit there and say, oh, well, artshows.com said I was good. That doesn't count. Yes, it does. 6 months from now, no one's going to care exactly where it said you were brilliant. They just know that there is a review out there that says You are brilliant. I tested recently. I was reviewed as an actor a million years ago playing Dr. Faustus. And just for the fun of it, I went online and looked up the review, and it's still there. So these art sites, maybe they're not the New York Times, but they're going to be here forever. And when you need them for grant writing, when you need them for press kits, when just plain you have 10 actors feeling unappreciated, and suddenly there is a review that says they're marvelous, that helps. Be humble. Give up that arrogance and say, I'm just looking for the daily news. No, take the art sites, take the listing section, take all of these places. They need the business. That's the big thing that we don't understand sometimes. The New York Times is not interested in the art. I hate to say it, and they're going to hate me for saying it. They need to sell papers. So they're going to go to shows that have large audiences. That's why your internet footprint has to be huge. That's why your SEOs have to be vast. And that's why if you could get reviewed in so many other little places, if you can get listings in so many other places, those are great. That's your leverage. If you can get 20 little places to review you, to talk about you, to list you, and then you contact the Times, or better still, your rep contacts the Times and says, how about coming down? And they Google you, what are they going to find? That might make all the difference in the world.
Noel, I want to jump in with your question as well. Are there as many reviewing organizations as in the past? It feels like no one reviews anymore. It surprises me that you feel that way because everybody reviews. It's not that nobody reviews. It's just the problem that we have today is that everybody reviews. Everybody and their sister creates a blog and goes online and gets reviews. So can you be more specific about what you're looking for? What in your question? You can turn your mic on if you want. Because I want to hear from you.
No, that's good information. I was not expecting this information. I have to process it all. So
Okay.
I didn't have a deeper, richer idea.
Okay, good.
Two things I see here. Firstly, Larry Daggett. Larry, I'm taking you to dinner. I'm reading what you wrote about me, and I'm holding back tears. That's really nice of you to say. Thank you. Larry is a brilliant composer. Larry is a brilliant musician. I worked with him twice, once promoting his show and once working with him side by side because I was directing a show that he was musical directing. And Larry, by the way, it's coming back to New York. We'll talk. But it was a really nice thing you wrote. Thank you. And John Goldsberry, I've heard you say that the best time to advertise a show is when you first write it. I've been through 3 dramaturges. I had excellent feedback, done graphics, a promo video, and secured a director, a Broadway name, a Patreon page, a website, and an LLC. Wow. But I still feel unseen. I'm missing something. How sound like something you can help with? For sure. You have all of these wonderful things. You bought the beautiful outfit. You got the lovely jewelry. You got the expensive cologne. But where's the party? Where's the party to go to? You need to have things seen there. A lot of times we think, well, I don't have a show, so I don't want to do any promotion. How about you yourself? You have all of these things. Why isn't there an article about you? Why aren't we promoting you? I had a very nasty article written about me some years ago saying I'm an arrogant bastard. 2 things. I am. And secondly, how can I sell someone else if I'm not selling me? So why can't we talk about your show, the process, what you've gone through, the famous names? Why can't we get interviews or whatever? So what you don't have a theater? So what you don't have an opening date? You have this amazing show. My college buddy, Danny Burstein, he was Tevye on Broadway. And I knew about it a year in advance. I didn't know what theater, I didn't know when it was opening, but Broadway World did an article that said Danny Burstein's going to play Tevye. So I knew it a year in advance. Why don't I know a year in advance about John Goldsberry? There's no reason we have to wait for the theater to make people know you're a star. If anything, make you the star, and then theaters will want to have your show in them.
Okay, we got, let's see. We have another one from
Mr. Green.
Yeah.
How
are press agents dealing with all the shows that are opening?
We're loving it.
I'm trying to have a conversation with you, so I'm trying to insert myself every now and then. How are press agents dealing with all the shows that are opening in April?
I'm loving it, and we're all loving it. What? There's so many shows that we're all exhausted and tired. Oh, may we be smited with such misery for the rest of our lives. There's a lot opening in April, and it's absolutely wonderful. A big thing which I tell people, and a lot of people are dubious of this, cross promotion. If you have a full docket, and I have happily I'm coming to the end of a major full docket, so I have time for my April and my May shows now. But there's no harm in cross promotion. I have 2 shows that dealt in World War II subject matters. Why can't I promote them simultaneously? Why can't they have their separate campaigns and then a cross promotional campaign? I've had shows with the same playwright, shows with an actor being in 2 different shows. Why can't we cross promote somehow to save time and to increase audience? So now this audience who doesn't know about this show suddenly does. So if you have a lot of shows, great. And they do it on television also. Why do you think some of these absolutely awful TV shows get existence on television? Because everyone wants the famous TV show, but it comes in bundling. Distributors will say, okay, you want this show? Great. You got to take these 5 with it. So why can't we bundle and give our audience the best possible on stage? Certainly couldn't hurt. A Symphony for Portland. That's right, David. Really lovely show. Thank you. I'll call soon. Okay. What else we got here? How do I get more followers on my social media post?
I feel
Photos
so
and
useless.
videos. Oh,
I feel useless. It's like,
well, actually, you tell me, Bob. Then how would you get more followers? I'll be the second one to answer the question. But you have a group that survived the pandemic.
I'm trying to answer. I'm trying to ask the questions. You can respond to Sue, because I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
I don't tell people how to get social media posts.
The best way is to have a conversation on social media. Do not, if you put up, hi, I'm in a show, come and see it, nobody cares. If you put down, hi, I'm honored to work with the great Bob Ost on this show, tag Bob Ost. And he, as you know, is the founder of TRU, tag TRU, hashtag TRU. And not only that, but last night I had a meeting with Doug DeVita, tag Doug DeVita, and I understand he's doing a show at the Fresh Fruit Festival, tag Fresh Fruit Festival. He also has something going on at the Free Fall in Florida, tag Free Fall. So now you're not arrogantly talking about your show. You're talking about the joy you're having doing your show. You've tagged 6 people in there, so it goes onto their sites. It now goes into the hashtag world. And now you look like a nice person extolling the virtues of others. And lots of people now know about your show. And enough of them are going to go, oh, what's she doing? And go to your website and have them click like. I did that with this event. I tagged a whole bunch of people that I was going to be speaking here. And I had over 40 people in one day click like on my thing. And when I went down and looked, I didn't know half of them. So apparently the cross tagging, just like cross promotion, works really well.
So let me see. I'm looking for more questions here. Oh, Melissa Bell was talking about cross promotion. Mentioned Barbenheimer. That actually wasn't a conscious choice on the part of the people that were part of the films. It just happened that the press made a big thing of it. So they were very lucky. But they both Barbie and Oppenheimer would have been huge box office hits even without each other's help. But it didn't hurt.
But there's your cross promotion.
Yeah,
no one's going to compare a Mattel doll to the foundation of the atom bomb unless you have Barbenheimer. So cross promotion, even if it's surreal, it certainly helps.
Michelle Bolden wants to know, is an online site like PR.com useful?
My knee-jerk answer is maybe. The problem with sites like this is like Amazon. I have 2 episodes of a TV show I did on Amazon. You have to sift through the million shows on Amazon to find them. Otherwise, you have to know what you're looking for. Major PR sites like that promote a lot. They have the capacity to promote hundreds and thousands of projects. So it's great to have a press release on there. It really is, because if someone's doing a Google search or whatever, that's another hit. But in terms of being really effective, you're with the millions that are there. You're with the millions of PR releases that are there. So in terms of your SEO, it's excellent. in terms of people going, oh, I want to see that show because I read it on pr.com, I stand by my maybe.
What do you think of what's it called? Show score.
Show score is actually better than most, but it's worse than most. It's better than most because people can review, because it's one of the few of its kind. It's like the good old days of TKTS. They did things like this, and TDF. It's really great, and they have an excellent marketing campaign for themselves. So you really get seen on ShowScore, and you get reviews on ShowScore. So if you get really good reviews, so you could put up best thing I've ever seen, showscore.com. The problem is, and also they have a membership. So there are members that get free tickets so they can go see your show. So you get reviewers. The problem is you get, I hate the word, amateur reviewers. You get people who's going to see the show, and if it's not exactly what they want, but they have the cojones to write on ShowScore, you're in trouble. If someone wants to get up there and be a troll, now everyone sees them say, I don't like that guy, he was ugly in that show. And it's the worst thing, you know, it's amateur, so no one's really going to heed it, but there it is. When someone does a search and someone doesn't like your show, it's up there. It's when I worked with Planet Connections, they did not like ShowScore at all. As much as they got a lot of good reviews, they didn't like it for that reason. Think about things like that. Wherever you're going to be reviewed by the public, really think about that. It's the roll of the dice. It's something to think about. But I really like ShowScore in general because they're really good to their people. They have a great marketing campaign. It's just you got to be de-trolling them.
Well, the thing about ShowScore that was also good is you can paper with them.
Yeah.
I worked with them, and I actually had very mixed feelings about it, but there were some positive feelings that I had. You don't really want to invite everybody in the world to write a review, especially people who don't necessarily have the background and the context for writing the review. But ShowScore also was very good about looking for reviews that they thought were intentionally hurtful, and they take them down. And you can actually call them and say, you know, I don't think this is an appropriate review. I would appreciate it if you would take it down. And they did listen.
There are a few places that do that, and I've made many a phone call saying, hi, I don't think this person was genuine in their comment, and they'll take it down fast.
Yeah.
So there are places that are really good that way.
So where are we with the questions? Jay,
Sir.
Jay Chacon, do we have any other questions that we've missed?
Let's see. Do we get Tita's? What about piggyback marketing? E.g., team up with nonprofit related to your show's theme?
No, we didn't. I didn't see that.
That's a great thing. We're trying to do that now with one of the off-Broadways over the summer. I've done it many times. It is an excellent, if we want to look at it from two levels, as a philanthropic gesture, it's wonderful. I'm doing a show now. I'm working on a show now that deals in rheumatoid arthritis and other physical ailments, and they're connecting with the Arthritis Foundation. And this is really great because they're spreading this is what I was talking about, like events. They're spreading information to those who need to hear it. The show is covering in an artistic way the plight of individuals with autoimmune diseases, and it's really marvelous. So on a philanthropic level, it is really excellent that you're doing it. It really sets you above things because you're saying, I'm taking my art and I'm helping life. And if we want to be, marketing people, that's an entire audience that doesn't know you're there, that wants to know you're there. Now, the entire mailing list of the Arthritis Foundation knows that this musical is happening and it's based on them. They'll show up. I remember was very pungent in the 1990s, especially when there was musicals or any shows that were LGBTQ related in any way. They would get huge audiences because as respect and equality rose for that community, the fact that there were shows that were focused on them became a major thing. So on two levels, you are helping your marketing by connecting to a not-for-profit, and you're also doing a really humanitarian thing with your show. So those of you with a conscience, that's a really excellent way of marketing your show.
Susan Crawford Googled off-off-Broadway and said the off-off-Broadway Alliance was formed in February 1972, which actually predates, definitely predates me. I wasn't involved until probably 78.
Same here. I
So-
started in 79. I actually
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, I was at the one of the original meeting. I think the second meeting about the formation of the New York Fringe Festival. Were you? Did we know each other back then?
I was involved in the early Fringe festivals. I don't think I was there at the formation. I was there at the formation of the Midtown International Theater Festival, but not the Fringe. I think I came in by their second or third season or something like that.
Those were interesting times.
Oh yeah.
Everybody had dreams.
Festivals then were really interesting. Festivals then were much more fun. That's what I really miss about the good old days. You had to be a community. Nowadays, everyone's online. You had to go into a room and smell everyone. I really appreciated the community aspect, the talking to people at that point, to be able to shake hands and things like that. That was missing. In the early days of festivals, that was incredible. I'm working with Callow now, and he's like the father of festivals. And
who's that? Oh, Frank Callow. Yeah, the Spotlight on festivals.
And we still have that in the Fresh Fruit Festival and things like that. You still connect, and I really miss that. That was absolutely wonderful.
But I do want to say that one of the we were talking about. I was trying to have a conversation with you earlier about the differences between then and now, and one of the big differences that has happened, in addition to losing all these theaters, so we've been losing theater festivals right and left. And a lot of it has to do with the change in the business model that's necessary in order for them to run. And New York State Department of Labor is involved in some of the decisions, and things are much harder to do now. The festivals are much harder to make happen than they were at one time. So there were fewer festival opportunities than there used to be.
Yep, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Equity just changed its rules again, and it's turning festivals into a tailspin again. So yes, you're absolutely right.
It's becoming just too expensive. It's becoming as expensive to be in a festival as it would be to produce your show. So it's costing the festivals so much money.
Festivals used to have like this suspension of disbelief. You would go to see a show that had two folding chairs and everyone wearing their own clothing, and you would still enjoy it because you came for the art of it. But as production values grew, as so many things grew, as competition grew, you couldn't do that and succeed. So contracts became more expensive, actors became more elusive, everything became more professional, and production values went up, and it became very expensive. And when theater rental becomes expensive, and you can't afford to pay the fees that a festival has because nobody can afford things, you got to close at some point.
How long did John keep Midtown Festival open?
18 years, 19 years, something like that.
Was it that long? Yeah, I was his marketing person for a while, and we were his fiscal sponsor for a while. So I was very connected with Midtown Festival, more than almost any other festival. Second would probably be Fresh Fruit. Joanna, by the way, anybody who came in late, make sure that you put your email address in the chat so that we know that you're here. Speaking of which, Joanna wants to know how and where to promote a show that comes to the United Solo Festival in New York City. Are there any New York City specific sites where I could advertise this show?
That comes to the United Solo Festival. United Solo has a wonderful reputation. It's always on Theater Row, but the double-edged sword is what? You get like one show unless you sell out, and then you get two. The trick with that, there are a lot of places that you can definitely promote it, but you can't promote it as a show. I've said to many clients, and I've had about a half a dozen in the United Solo Festival, you can't say you're a show. With one performance, you can't say you're a show. The Downtown Urban Arts is the same way. You're not. You're an event. You promote it as an event. Come to see this exciting event. One night only, this show. If you promote it as an event, then you'll get people who say, okay, I'm going to go see this event. If you're saying, I have a show and it's available on Tuesday, they're going to say, oh, I'm not available. What's available Thursday? And you're gone from the conversation. Be an event, don't be a show. That's the best way to promote something like United Solo or Downtown Urban Arts.
So I think that we're at 6:38, so I think I'm going to wind down now. Although I do want to acknowledge Doug DeVita, who reminds me that we were at the early Fringe meeting together, and that we did a
Wow.
play
Yeah.
of mine there. Doug was my go-to director. He was the one person I always depended on to bring my plays to life on stage. So thank you for all that you've done for me in the past, Doug. I appreciate it. And Michael DiGaetano, you were in the final Midtown, were you? I think that I was marketing director there for 3 or 4 years.
Yes, I was.
And let's
I was
see.
the final press rep. I was the final marketing. I was the final everything. I was there when John said, "Okay, I've had enough." John is a founder. A lot of times we all sit there and say, "Oh, I wish I met Joseph Papp. Oh, I wish I met Orson Welles." I'm glad I met John Chatterton. John Chatterton changed the face of off-off-Broadway with Uber, which was the off-off-Broadway review, not the taxi. He made a difference in terms of those independent artists. So anyone that was involved in the Midtown International Theater Festival, you're really lucky, period.
So on that note, being a little bit nostalgic and missing some of the things that aren't with us that were with us once upon a time. Yes, we've lost theaters, we've lost theater festivals, but we haven't lost our passion. And the passion is going to keep moving us forward. And I think that off-Broadway, Broadway, regional theater, wherever theater is happening and wherever we find that we fit into it, we bring our passion to that, and it's going to survive. It's going to survive whatever we go through. It survived COVID. It's going to survive whatever. I think that there's just a basic human need for theater. I think there's a basic human need for art. That's not to say that everybody needs it, but
There's a basic human need for you, Bob. That's number one. Organizations like TRU do exactly what theater needs. We don't need theater as much as we need community. The whole point, and I teach it at several universities.
Well, theater is community. It's an equal sign.
Completely.
Yeah.
I teach it at several universities, and I talk about theater history and about, the festivals in ancient Greece and all of that. The point is the community. Look at all the people that are here right now. Okay, we don't have the same theaters, we have different ones. Okay, we're using studios and cabarets for theaters, whatever. We're doing different plays about different subjects, but we're all a community and we're all here. As long as we consider ourselves the community, theater will always exist. Theater will always survive.
If I had a track of Gloria Gaynor, I would be playing "I Will Survive" right now. I'm going to just thank Jay for being here, for being my guest today. We're probably going to hang out with you a little bit, so if you don't have to leave. And I just want to say, okay. So I'm going to say to everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Thank you for finding your way to TRU, and I hope you'll become part of our community. I hope that you'll email me and say, invite me to the weekly Zooms. Next week, we have a theater company, a feminist theater company from Dayton, Ohio, that's coming here. We are interested in all sorts of aspects of theater, every aspect of theater that I can conjure up with guests. We're going to talk about. The week after that, we're going to have a friend of ours who has actually won 8 Emmy Awards for documentary films. So we're going to talk about documentary films and theater. And if there's things that you want to talk about and the guests you want me to have, email me. If you want to be part of the group, email me, trunltd@aol.com. It's trunltd@aol.com. Gratitude to everybody in the room here, to the community. Thank you for being here every week. So many of you come every week, and thank you for the people that are just finding us now. Hope you will continue being part of us. This
folks,
is the pitch.
Thank you. This is, as I've said it many times, before I was me, I was you. I spent my life climbing ladders and asking for money. And when I got too old, I said, and I'm not too old, but you know what I mean, I wanted to help those involved. So before I was me, I was you, and I know how much money you don't have. My goal is to keep theater alive. I would love to, all of my little tricks of the trade, I would love to employ on your shows. If you want to chat about your show on any which way, whether it's just to chat about it or retain services or whatever, give me a buzz. And if you're going to say, I don't have enough money, don't worry. Neither do I. Let's work together and make your show something special with what you do have.
And speaking about not having enough money, we're starting to say that we've been doing this for three and a half, what is it, 4 years, 202 consecutive weeks, whatever that is now. I can't even think what it is. It's a service, and it's pay what you can. And a lot of people do attend, and we welcome you for free. However, if you can pay something, we appreciate it. We always are going to need money to keep going. If nobody ever paid for anything at TRU, we eventually would close. It's just a reality. So if you want to support us and if you want to donate something now, go to TRU Donate, trudonate.com. That's trudonate.com. And we'll gladly thank you for whatever you can do to help us keep going.
Keep the community strong.
Keep the community.
Donate to TRU. Keep the community strong.
Thank you, Jay. So that's it, everybody. See you next week, I hope.